Hello, Toolkit Masters. Fantastic to have you here. Q&A Thursdays come around again. Comes around quickly, doesn't it? I'm really excited to have you all here. I've got some really interesting stuff to share with you today, so I'll be really excited to hear what your thoughts are about it. It was something that I came across just recently. I was talking to a group of people in a fairly neutral environment, and they know what I do, and one of them approached me and sort of told me this story about some issues she was having with her new boss and how she was finding it really difficult to connect with that new boss. She felt like she was being micromanaged. She felt like she was being undermined. And it was really causing a lot of stress and angst and all sorts of things. And so I really wanted to have a bit of a chat about that today. So today's topic is I hate my boss. So without further ado, let's do our housekeeping. So I'd really like if you could, just down in your comments, just say hello, hi, I can see and hear you, all those sorts of things. Just let me know that you're there so that I can make sure that all this gear is set up correctly. So, yep, so just in the bottom right-hand side, you will see type your message here, and if you could just put in there that you can see and hear me, that would be fantastic. All right, so anybody that can see and Tony can see and hear me, fantastic. All right, anyone else? There's a few more out there I can see lurking. All right, so as I said, I'm assuming that you can all see and hear me if I'm not hearing anything else. Anyway, type in there when you get the chance, just so that I know you're out there, and then we can start. So as I said, so I had this really interesting conversation, and it's not something that's uncommon. It's something that's happened, you know, in every organisation, in every industry, in every layer of leadership. You get something like this happening. So it's really impactful when you're going through this sort of circumstance. So over 70% of leaders that leave a firm don't leave the firm because of the company, they leave the firm because of their manager, which is a statistic that we need to change, and that I'd really like to be part of that change. So let's have a look at what do you do when you hate your boss. So I'm going to Hey, Niall, how you going? Great to see you. Fantastic to have you here. So hopefully you haven't been in this situation, Niall, but if you have, maybe this will resonate with you. And if you haven't, then maybe it's something that you can put in your back pocket for later on, or even if you can share with a co-worker that might be going through this as well. So, okay, so what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to share my screen with you, so bear with me. All right, so we'll start this off. And I think there's some simple steps that we can do to try and alleviate or try and make this a better situation, okay? So what do you do when you hate your boss? Now, think of this scenario. You really loved your job at one stage, right? You loved being there. You've been there a while. You had some great comrades, great co-workers. You really got on with your boss really well. And then your boss then decides to leave to go to another company or another firm. The new manager comes in, and all of a sudden, you know, he's aloof. He's prone to micromanaging, he or she. So when I say he, I'm thinking he or she. Prone to micromanaging, may write off any projects that weren't his brainchild or weren't his idea. And, you know, within a year, you see all your colleagues have been replaced or left or whatever, and you're at your wit's end, you know. So at first you try winning him over, after asking for his feedback, asking for his guidance, and that doesn't seem to work. He seems to be fairly unresponsive. You couldn't get the relationship to click. You're still trying. You can't get the relationship to click. You are feeling under the pump. You know, it's an extremely stressful, you know, situation to be in. So after, you know, quite some time, you decide to go to your HR manager and have a chat to them. Now, they might be empathetic to you, but if there's not been any other complaints, or if you don't have a bank of evidence, or if there's been no slide in performance or whatever with his team, then really there's not much that they can do but be empathetic with you. So you're not going to get any wins there. So, you know, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling depressed, You're unable to do any of the good work that you used to do before. So your performance is slipping because of these feelings that you're feeling. And you're worried at this stage that the only thing that you can do now is get out. And as I said, this situation is not uncommon. Unfortunately, it's quite rampant out there, and it's something that we need to address. So I'm going to give you some really quick steps that you can do now to try and address this situation. And there's some of these steps you're not going to like because it's looking in the mirror, and there's some steps that are going to take you some time. But believe you me, if you want to remove yourself out of this situation, then you have to follow this to the T. So we'll go through them really carefully. And if you have any questions, thoughts, queries, or anything else, then please put them in the comments bar and I'll get to them straight away. But this is really, really a dire situation that makes people leave companies that they would otherwise love to stay at, which is a really sad situation. So let's see if we can make some changes there. All right, so remember, I've been a leadership coach for some time. I've spent years and years shadowing leaders and executives and helping them try and resolve dysfunctional relationships with their managers. And so much of what I'm sharing with you might seem like common sense, but ultimately, sometimes when we find ourselves in the situation, our common sense leaves us and we struggle with what to do next because we've become victims and we become so focused on the problem that we don't think about what solutions we need to put in place. So I'm going to share this with you and hopefully it'll help. If you have got a co-worker that is going through something like this, maybe you can share this replay with them. If they've got any questions or if you've got any questions yourself, then please feel free to talk to me at teamleadertoolkit.com. So ask@teamleadertoolkit.com and I will get back to you straight away because this is an awful situation to be in. All right, so what do we have to do first? So this is where I'm going to ask you to put yourself in their shoes, right? So honestly, I don't think bad bosses are inherently bad people. I think they're good people with some really poor behaviours and weaknesses that need to be worked on. Okay, so if you can think of that bad bosses aren't particularly bad people. They're people with poor behaviours because they have weaknesses that can be exacerbated by the pressures of work or being in a new role and having to feel like that you need to own it and perform and, deliver 100% on results. So I just want you to consider this as your first step. So consider the external pressures that your manager's under. So if you're thinking that they're actually a good person, but they have some weaknesses that's causing some bad behaviours and they're feeling under pressure by their boss and they've got lots of things that they've come in and been told that well, this is why we're bringing you in. We want you to change this. We want you to change that. So they're feeling that like they're under the microscope. So you need to just take that into account and not consider how they act, but why they're acting in that way. So why are they angry when they walk in the door? Why are they micromanaging? Why are they why are you feeling like they're undermining you? Why are they doing that? Because what we want to do is we want to show empathy. Right. So what happens is our brains, once we get given a certain behavior, we seem to mirror it. So, for example, if someone gets really angry with us, we tend to mirror it and become angry back. If somebody becomes really affectionate, then we tend to mirror it and become affectionate back. But if somebody shows us empathy and shows that it is genuine and authentic empathy, that they want to know what's going on with us and they want to help us and they want to support us and they want us to confide in them, then that would be mirrored back. So what I'm saying is if you can go to your boss and show a bit of empathy and show that you care and show that you're there to support, then that will be mirrored back. And it might take a little while. It doesn't happen overnight, like that ad says on TV. It does not happen overnight, but it will happen because it's just part of the way our brains are made up. So I want you to consider doing that, putting yourself in their shoes and then determining why they're acting in certain ways and try and get into the mindset that they're not bad people, they're good people with some weaknesses that is delivering poor behaviours. Okay, so if you can think of that, then you might be able to approach them in a different way. Now, the key aspect of this is you cannot make it a formal meeting. It has to be, you have to start that conversation in really neutral ground. So you need to think about, you know, how is it delivered? It needs to be delivered in an informal setting. So don't make an appointment with them. Don't put something in their calendar. Instead, look for the right moment when the person is receptive to your efforts. So, you know, they might have just come out of a presentation that they've done really well, so they're feeling okay, or, you know, something like that. And you might be actually going to grab a coffee, and you might say, do you know what? Why don't you come and have a coffee with me? I'd love to hear about that presentation you've just done. So suddenly they're going with you. And that's probably an appropriate time when they say, look, I've noticed you've been under real pressure lately, and I noticed that it's really impacting you, or whatever it may be. Just having that genuine authenticity with regards to showing empathy will make not only your mindset change, but it will show them that you're there to support as well, and they will start mirroring back. So just try that. Think about it for a while, let it sit for a while. It might be difficult to feel empathy for a manager who isn't given what you need, or who you actively dislike. I understand that. It's really, really tough. But this is where you extend your social intelligence and you say, you know what, I can get above and beyond this. If I think to myself, this is not a bad person, this is actually a good person that has got bad behaviours because they have weaknesses. And that might be because they don't know how to act under pressure, or they've got slight perfectionistic styles, or, you know, all these sorts of other things that's causing this poor behaviour. So they're not bad people, they're good people that have got weaknesses that are causing poor behaviours. So try and change your mindset around that. It's difficult, I know, but it's just something that you want to try and do if you can. Put yourself in their shoes, show some empathy, and they will mirror it back. But again, it's not something that happens overnight. And you can't just have a fight and then go, oh, I see you're under pressure, because that's not going to be the right way to do it. You have to pick your timing, okay? Really, really important. Okay, so what's the next one? Now, this is one that you might not like. So you need to look in the mirror a little bit and just be a little bit reflective. Look at yourself. In my experience, people who struggle to work well with their bosses are always part of the problem, nearly always part of the problem themselves. Now, I'm not saying that you're the instigator or you're difficult to get on with or any of those sorts of things, not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that there's a small part of this problem that you need to own and be accountable for. You know, it probably isn't what you want to hear, but acknowledging what you might be doing that you can tweak or change, figuring out what it is, adjusting it accordingly, you might be able to salvage the relationship, okay? So start with some introspective stuff. So consider objectively as you can, what criticisms has your boss come to you with? You're never on time with your deadlines, you're doing this, you're doing that. Are some of those true? Are some of those true? Can you own some of those? In what areas can you improve this stuff? What aspects of your behaviour might irk your boss? Do you not communicate with them because you just don't like them anymore, so you've just stopped communicating with them? Is that irking your boss? You know, these are little things that you've probably done to try and gain some ground back. And what it's doing is it's exacerbating the situation. All right, so what other things happen during this sort of incident as well is sometimes personality clashes are a cause of, you might have known someone in your past that has been very similar to this person, and they have caused you angst and anxiety, and you haven't liked them and you've got them out of your life, and now suddenly this person's come into your life and they're very similar in personality, or they might be similar in physical stature or whatever, and they remind you of this person, and all of a sudden you've got already this built up angst from the last one, but you're actually transferring it onto this one. So that's just something you need to be aware of too. Are you carrying over angst and dislike from another person because they act or look like this person? So that's something that we need to really get inside ourselves and go, well, actually, they did remind me of my third grade teacher, which was an absolute biatch, and now, you know what I mean? So just see if you can make sure that, you know, that's not happening, because that's just going to exacerbate the situation as well. Okay, so that's the other thing is you can do in this sort of circumstance is once you've looked at yourself and you've you know, maybe pulled a few things out and said, okay, yeah, I can do that differently. Yeah, all right, I'll own that. Now go to your colleagues. Go to your colleagues and say to them, you know, what are my strengths? What are my areas of weakness? Where do you find that, you know, I'm struggling the most? You know, I want some feedback back because I want to improve how I work and how I perform. So, you know, make sure you frame those questions carefully. You're not going to go to your boss and go, what am I doing wrong? Or you're not going to go to your colleagues and go, what am I doing wrong? Because the boss doesn't like me. What am I doing wrong? Because that's just going to put more pressure on. Frame it up that you want to improve yourself as a whole. What are my strengths? What are areas of opportunity for me that I can do things better? How can I improve my performance? What do you see? So they can give you some sort of feedback there, because sometimes we've got some blind spots that we don't know about, and we need to get that feedback to uncover some of those blind spots. And I did have somebody who I was coaching some years ago, and he used to think that his boss used to needle him all the time, like something was never good enough, you know, whatever he did wasn't good enough. And it got him down, like he got him to the point where he was going to go, he was walking out the door, he'd had enough. So I just asked him to do a few of these exercises, and I asked him to go and speak to a few colleagues. And some of the colleagues said to him, you know what, Ben, you're fantastic at a lot of stuff that you do. But when you go to present stuff, when the boss says, okay, you've got to do a presentation on whatever project you've been working on, you don't seem very organised. You seem unorganised. You don't seem like you've got it together. You know, your slides weren't working properly the other day. It just doesn't come together well. Even though we know you've done a brilliant job, you haven't presented that as the case. So then Ben had to look inside himself and go, okay, well, presentations do make me nervous, but that's not my performance. That's because I don't like speaking in front of people. Okay, well, there's where I have to improve so that I can show the great work that I've been doing rather than portray something that's not right. So really great to deep dive into with your colleagues and go, don't be nice, be honest, because the word nice is an anagram for not interested, to care enough, right? So try and tell them that. Don't be nice, be honest with me because I really need this feedback. Okay, so consider yourself. So that's really, really important. Take accountability, have a look in the mirror. What are the little things that you're doing to try and gain some ground back that might be irking your boss? What are the things that you can get clean from your colleagues? And making sure you're not transferring a hate or an angst or an anxiety from somebody in your past onto this person because they look similar or may act similar or speak similar or whatever. So just have a look inside yourself and consider those things. All right, what else do we have to do? Give change a chance. Now, what do I mean by this? If you decide that you've gone all through that self-assessment, you've built your self-awareness, you've gone to your colleagues and all that, and you conclude that you're not the one derailing the relationship, then you should openly suggest that the two of you don't seem to be interacting well and you need to remedy the situation. So how do you do that? This is a conversation you need to have, and it will be a fairly formal conversation. So you need to let your boss know that, you know, I'd really like to have a conversation with you, and this is quite a difficult conversation for me. So let's set some time aside so we can have that conversation, so that they're aware. They're not thinking that you're just coming in and telling them about the latest week's reports or whatever. They're aware that you're having a difficult conversation with them on Thursday at 3 p.m. and you've booked out 45 minutes. Okay, so they need to know that that's happening. And there's a number of ways into this conversation. You can tack it onto something you've already been having. So if you've already been having one-on-ones and it's come up and sort of been scratching the surface of it, you can, you know, put it on the end of that and say, right, as you know, on our latest one-on-ones, I've been feeling some angst here, and I've been feeling that yours and I relationship is suffering. And I would like to, you know, get some mediation or some help to try and get us back on track with that, because I don't feel like we're gelling as a team as we should, or whatever it may be, right? So you need to make sure that you feel safe in that as well, and try and get a third party. So give change a chance. So give him a chance, or him or her a chance to change, because they might not actually really know the impact that they are having on you at this stage. So they might be so involved with how much pressure they're under, how much deadlines they're under, what sort of performance they need to do, what they need from their team. They're not feeling supported. They feel isolated. They're not getting the support they need, all that sort of stuff, that they might not be looking outwards to you and realizing the angst that you're going through. So you having this frank discussion with them, saying, do you know what, I don't think our relationship is where it needs to be. I'm currently feeling unsupported, as I think probably you are as well. We're not working as a team together, and I think we can get much more out of this relationship if we could. I have tried to come and chat to you about it through my one-on-ones in previous weeks. So I don't feel that that's made a difference. So I'd like to get some mediation in and see if that will help us. So, you know, you're having a frank conversation with them, and you're going to give them a chance to change, because you've gone into retrospect and looked at yourself. You've asked your colleagues, you've changed a few of your behaviours, you haven't transferred your angst of someone else onto them. You've done all that. This is the next step of trying to get that relationship on track and giving them a chance to change. Okay. And as I said, when you do begin this dialogue, it might, and what I have found in the past quite a few times is you might discover that your boss isn't even aware, or not consciously aware, of the degree of discomfort that you're in. So this is something that you need to be able to have that conversation with. And let me tell you, it is a difficult conversation to have. So you can't be emotive with it. Download the difficult discussion planner that's on the tool suite. So if you go into the unlocking portal and you go down to the last tab, there's a tool suite in there. It's got a load of tools. Download the difficult discussion planner, sit down with it for 20 minutes and just answer some questions to try and get that conversation on point for yourself, so you know exactly where you're going with it and it doesn't go off left or go off right, and you don't get emotive, okay? You want to get out on the table what you need, but you need it to be received the way you intend it to be. So you don't want this to be an aggressive conversation. You don't want this to be a belittling or a blame or a finger pointing or a chest poking conversation. This is just an open, honest conversation about where you feel the relationship is and where you would like it to be. Okay, so what do we do next? If you've got any questions or queries, by the way, just please feel free to get in there and have a think and ask me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. The next thing, if you can't improve things by, you've changed your behaviour, you've opened the lines of communication with your boss, and if your colleagues feel the same way that you do, then I think at this stage you need to think about alerting your HR people and the boss's bosses to the problem. So what I mean by this is you're going to go down the disciplinary line now. So this is not an easy line to go down, and you have to have evidence and you have to have things backing you up, and we'll talk about that. You need to have a substantial business case of why your boss is a liability. So are people not hitting their targets? Is there been a lack of performance in some area because of it? Has there been a big turnover of staff? And remembering, when you turn over staff, it costs a business between 25 and 50 grand to replace that person once they've gone through all the recruitment, all the training, all the setting up of IT and everything else. It costs between 25 and 50 grand to replace a person. So if this boss has come in and half of your team have been replaced, then, you know, that's a cost to the business of however much that will be, however many people that is. So get a substantial business case of the liability that your boss is doing right now. They will, you know, they might, you know, the performance might have suffered, all those sorts of things. And you must be prepared to make a credible threat of litigation against the company. So if you're feeling harassed, belittled, intimidated, if your well-being, you can say, look, you know, this is this bank of evidence. These are my records of conversation. This is all the, you know, third-party reports and people that it's happened to. These are the turnover of staff since that person's been in place. And when I've talked to those staff, these are their witness statements of why they left. And honestly, I can't stand this anymore. I'm going to consider putting a formal complaint in against this person for harassment or whatever, because that's how I feel this has got to. So you'll need documented evidence of your boss's negative impact on you, and any sort of inappropriate behaviour that has happened. So if he or she has threatened you, or shouted at you, or touched you in an inappropriate way, or whatever, that needs to all be documented. And witness statements, if you can get them as well. So if anybody has witnessed any of this inappropriate behaviour, that's going to be really good. And examples of correspondence that clearly breach the company rules. So if you've had emails of the really inappropriate, rude sort of, bullying type emails, text messages, voice messages, any of that, you need to keep all that sort of stuff. And with the more people that are willing to go on the record with similar complaints, then it'd be harder for any senior managers to ignore or deny the problem, and they will have to do something about it. But let me tell you, lodging a formal complaint is probably your last resort, because it will take up a lot of time. It will be absolutely exhausting for you. But if you feel it needs to be done, then do it. But just make sure you've got everything backing you up. You need records of conversation. You need all the stuff recorded. So if you've got evidence of emails or, any text messages or anything like that, you need instances of what happened with the time and the date and the conversations that happened. You need witness statements. You need to, have a business case of why this person is being a liability for the company. So there's all sorts of things that you need to do. All right. So I've seen lots and lots of cases where subordinates have got to their last straw and they've made a complaint without any substance. They haven't got any evidence, that nothing's been done, and they've absolutely ballsed it up, and they can't do anything about it now, and that boss is going to stay. So, and that's the last that you want. You don't want the boss to know that you've put in a formal complaint about them without trialing all these things first. So you've got a clear conscience to say, I looked at myself, I made some changes, I increased my performance, I changed some behaviours on myself. I've said that. You've had a conversation, quite a candid conversation with them. You've tried to get mediation. Now you're going down the formal line. A tough place to be, but absolutely necessary if you get to this point. And make sure you have got that evidence behind you. And then the last but not least is decision. So if you're unable to change your relationship with your boss, taking the steps that I've already talked about, and if there isn't any potential for group action, so if you can't actually gather staff, some bosses, some people might be quite narcissistic and quite clever about how they do stuff, so they'll never leave you any evidence to gather, and it's all undermining and it's all, all those sorts of things. So if you've done everything that you can, but you can't gather any evidence and it's purely focused at you, nobody else knows what's going on, then your options become really limited, unfortunately, and there's not much else you can do. So in these situations, most employers simply go through the motions at work to minimise contact with your boss. And if you decide to stay on, minimise contact, do what you need to do, try and compartmentalise it. So, that's in a box over there. And with the possibility or hope that they will move on at some stage, because usually people that are like that, they don't spend a long time in one position. They move around trying to, make their way up the ladder. But also when you're going to if you say to yourself that you're going to play for time, you also need to set a time limit for yourself so you don't go nuts hanging in there and it doesn't become a way of life for you, because that's not a sustainable place to be. So if you say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to give it 6 months, I'm going to compartmentalise that relationship with that boss, I'm going to have minimise impact with him, minimise my dealings with him as much as possible, do my job the best as I possibly can, and I'm going to give it 6 months or 12 months or whatever you want to do and see. So what you're doing is buying yourself some time and seeing if they will leave. But that is a tough situation to be in, because you're already in a position where you're feeling targeted and all those sorts of stuff. So sometimes it's a really unhealthy place to be. Sometimes for your own well-being, it might be best to actually look for another job while you're still employed. So you can exit on your own terms. So beef up your resume, contact headhunters, line up references, and start interviewing. Having a bad boss is not your fault at all. But if you've done all these steps and then you stay on, that's your conscious choice. So, it's up to you, really. It's up to you of what you can and can't do with regards to your own well-being and that of your families. Because let's face it, these things don't just, impact us. It actually impacts our families as well. So there you go. So I'm just going to go through those really quick. So if you've got a boss you hate, things aren't working really well for you, there's a number of things that you can do. Number one, put yourself in their shoes. Make sure that you have got a bit of empathy. Remember, bad bosses aren't bad people. They're usually good people with some weaknesses that produce poor behaviours. So try and think about it in that sense so that you can humanise them again, because you've demonised them at this stage, so you want to humanise them again. Okay, so put yourself in your shoes, show a bit of empathy. The next one is consider yourself. So it's not something that everybody wants to hear, but sometimes we need to look in the mirror and consider, what are we doing to actually exacerbate this situation? What can we do better? How can we increase our performance? How can we, change our behaviour slightly? So look at yourself, because let me tell you that in these situations, I don't think I've had one case where the person who's complaining is actually at no fault whatsoever. So, there is a little bit of fault that we need to own and take part of. Then consider yourself. So we've done consider yourself. Give change a chance. So sit down. You've done everything that you need to do with yourself. Sit down now and say, hey, this is not working for us. This relationship's going downhill. Let's try and get it back on track. Let's get some help. Let's get some mediation. Can we do it ourselves? Whatever we need to do. Then get help. If that doesn't work, then go down the disciplinary line and get help through your HR. But make sure you've got that business case and you've got that evidence. That bank of evidence is absolutely going to be instrumental in being successful with regards to this complaint. And last but not least is either play for more time. So give yourself, a set period of time of how long you can put up with it and just hope they leave, or move on yourself. So it's a tough situation to be in. And I have been in this situation a number of times, actually, both in the military and in corporate. And I've been coaching executives that are quite narcissistic with lots of blind spots. And it's really quite frustrating, because sometimes they're good people and they can have a laugh with you and they can do all this sort of stuff, but put them in a situation that they feel like they need to exert power or in a competitive sort of environment, and suddenly this monster comes out. So it's not they're bad people, they've just got really poor behaviours when they're put in certain situations. So it's a tough situation to be in, and I don't envy it. So Niall, Tony, and whoever else is on there, I think there's about 7 online, 8. Whoever is out there, if you've got this situation, then please try those things that we mentioned. If you have a co-worker that's going through that, then absolutely show them the replay of this, and hopefully it will help. If anyone else has got any questions with regards to this, because this really does impact your well-being, and you take it home to your families. So it's something that needs to be actioned. Okay, so do you have anything to add, Tony or Niall? Is there anything else that you want to add to this? Is there any questions that you've got? Yes, good one, Niall. The Johari window. So that's Niall, that's great. So the Johari window is we can Google that. So just Google the Johari window, and it actually shows 4 quadrants, and what we want to do is sort of diminish the blind spots quadrants, don't we? So that's exactly right, Niall. It's fantastic. It'll help you get the feedback that you need to diminish the blind spots so that you can be aware of the impact that you have on others. So, for example, a really crude example would be, I had a leader that used to come in, and he was a great leader, But all his team used to laugh and say, well, you can't speak to him before 10 because you won't get what you need. He's just totally unresponsive until he's had his second coffee, and then he's all on the ball. That was a total blind spot for him. So we did a bit of a Johari window, and that actually came out. And although it was laughable and people were joking about it, it was actually true. And it was and Jared was blown away that was something that he had no idea about, that he was feeling, that everyone was feeling that he was unapproachable before 10 a.m. So, yeah, those sorts of things, that self-reflection is really fantastic. So, Noel, great suggestion there. Johari window really works. All right. Okay, without further ado, if there's no other questions, thank you everybody for joining us today for Q&A Thursday. It was a bit of a touchy one, but you know what? It's something that's relevant and it's more common that we know. So don't think, if you're going through this, don't think you're on your own, because it is something that has been going on for over 30 years that I've been in this business, and it will continue to go on. So all we need to do as leaders is have a think about the great leaders that we aspire to be and take bits and pieces out of them. And then the leaders that were shit to us, the leaders that were crap leaders, learn from them too. What will you not do? You will not treat people like that. You will not do this. You will not do that, because that's a great learning as well. So make sure that we don't keep changing. I know in the military, it was for a while there, it was if you had a shit leader, then you would turn into a shit leader, because you would think, well, that's just your right now to treat people like that because you're in that sort of rank. And it was incredible. So let's not, make this happen again. Just take the learnings from those great leaders and also take the learnings from those not so great leaders, and let's make sure that we become the best version of ourselves and empower others. Okay, fantastic. Great to see you again, guys. Let's make sure that we do it again next Thursday. I've got another great topic coming up. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate at the ask@teamleadertoolkit.com. Send us an email and we'll get onto it straight away. The other thing, just a quick announcement. We've put some more student workbooks on the Unlocking portal. Again, they're not in order, but there's more coming in. I just got another one through last week, but I'm changing the cover of it. So they're just gone back to get the cover changed. But anyway, so keep your eye on those. They're coming in in dribs and drabs. So we will upload them as they come in. All right. So without further ado, thank you very much, guys. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will catch up with you next Thursday. Bye for now.